So the next item on the agenda is the report from the subcommittee on public comment process, and Matthew is going to do that.
I'll do my best. So we discussed last time that we were going to break out to discuss how we were going to work with the public comment process. Obviously, none of us are aware of the open meeting laws. Most of us probably aren't, as well as how we're going to manage the opportunity to give public time to talk, but also not be here till midnight, and to be able to do so in a constructive manner, in a constructive way. So the statement that was read at the beginning is a culmination of most of that conversation. To review a couple of points that are on there, we wanted to make sure that we announced that we're working with DCS, but we're not working for DCS, that we are volunteers, that we come from different disciplines, that just our disciplines overlap with DCS, and that because we have an overlap with them and we have similar goals to what they do within our respective areas, that we are asked to report to and oversee those areas that we have expertise in. And then for the public, for their perspective, so they understand who we are and what we are, that if they were going to give comments, that they would hopefully be able to direct their comments to somebody on the board that has or is within that specific discipline. So if it's a law enforcement issue, then I would appreciate it if you direct that towards myself, and then if it's something that I can find out, I will try to find the answers, or try to work those out, or try to explain them to you. Secondary to that, explaining what our capacity is. We can make recommendations, but we have no authority over DCS, so we're just making recommendations to them based on things that we're learning, things that we see within our own disciplines. The Ombudsman's office was part of that conversation because they obviously are the first line response or intake for those issues that as they come into DCS. So we wanted that to be part of the announcement that's put in here. And then talking about how to manage the actual time of when we were going to open it up to the public to be able to speak. Again, we don't have the ability to be here all day long, but we want to give people an opportunity to be able to express what it is they want to say. Understanding that 2 minutes is not a long time, but we obviously can't be here forever. So if you can work on identifying who would be the best person to hear what your complaints are, or your issues, or your thoughts, to direct it towards that particular panel member, keeping it concise and short, and be able to bring that up to us. With the open meeting laws, it was important for us to understand that we are not allowed to be able to respond back to a topic brought up by the public that is not on the agenda. That's one of the rules of the open meeting law that I didn't know about. So if it's on the agenda, it's open for us to be able to respond to it. So if a member of the public comes in and they talk about something on the agenda, we can have dialogue back and forth. If they bring up something off the agenda, we're not allowed by law to talk about that at this particular time because of an open law meeting requiring a pre-notification, allowing other people to be present if they wanted to be present. So if we want to take, somebody comes up with something that sounds like it's something that we would, as a committee, would like to learn more about, to table or even to put it on an agenda item later on, then we can do so. At that point, we can put it on the agenda item later on to further study at a different time. So in a nutshell, the notice that was read at the beginning was to try to summarize that, to be able to explain everything, and to educate us at the same time, to educate the public so that they understand what our role is, what our capacity is, how we want to be able to listen to what their concerns are, but also to make sure you understand what our ability to be able to respond to that information is. So in a nutshell, we're still learning. I'm not saying that we're perfect and this is the end-all be-all. The department's counsel is present there to make sure we weren't messing things up, and they probably will continue to correct us as we are working through this.
And they're on the phone right now, the department's counsel.
So she can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, if they can hear us.
So that's a quick nutshell of what we talked about.
Do the committee members have comments, questions, thoughts?
Madam Chair, I guess my question would be, since we've had a committee look at it, has a two-part question. In the deliberations of that subcommittee, was there legal advice there at that point in time, or did we receive legal advice? And then if we've got recommendations coming from that committee, does the entire committee need a chance to receive legal advice about its obligations under the open meeting law? So kind of a two-part question there.
I don't have that answer.
Well, so we do have the council on the phone if we need any legal advice for the entire committee.
Well, the first part of my question is, because I was not able to attend the subcommittee meeting, is in terms of what actually happened, did we receive legal advice at that time, or was it just kind of an overview or
No, they would-
a discussion about?
They were present.
They were present.
I'll let you know they were present there, and they took the information and pulled it together. So I think, I would like to recommend that we table this discussion, if you don't mind, until Emily comes back, and because she was a big part of that, and that we also provide the information from that committee in writing to everybody present.
And I think I support that, because the question I have is if there's a specific, new approach we're going to take to the protocol. I think all of us need the benefit of legal advice, because the open meeting law is our obligation as the the officers of the state for this particular meeting. So I think we just need the chance to ask our questions in an executive session, if there's going to be a preferred course of action that's offered to us by council.
I think we would need a motion to table that.
I'd like to make a motion to table this discussion till the next time.
And I second that.
Any debate? Do we have any ayes?
Aye.
Any nays? Ayes, ma'am. All right, so the next item on the agenda is the call for public comments. So now is the portion of the meeting for public comment. In order to hear as many members of the public as possible, we will limit each share to 2 minutes. You cannot give your time to someone else. If you've signed up, it's very important for us to hear what you have to say. Remember, it's not this committee's role to further investigate individual circumstances. If individual circumstances are discussed, we can only listen. Please honor all children's rights to confidentiality by not revealing case-specific information. We are particularly interested in macro-level child welfare issues that require a solution and your ideas for solving those issues. Please remember, due to open meeting laws, the committee cannot discuss items that are not listed on the current agenda. However, the committee may choose to study the matter and schedule a discussion for a later date. This is done so that the topics to be discussed can be noticed to the public prior to their discussion, and the members of the public can choose to join the conversation. All right, so we will go through in the order that you signed up. And you each have 2 minutes, and can someone be a timekeeper for me? All right, so the first person is Stephen Ingram. Did I say that right? Aisha, you tell us that every time. I am so sorry. Handouts.
What would you like me to say?
The middle one is the best.
Okay.
It's probably warm by now.
I'd like to give you 2 compliments, but I don't want it to come out of my 2 minutes. Is that fair? First of all, I'd like to compliment you. This is the first time out of 5 meetings where I've actually seen you work together and as a board. You follow most of the rules, open meeting law. You asked more questions in this meeting than you did in the last 5 put together. I don't know if you count them, but as an old school teacher, I count them. And questions mean you're learning. So, second of all, thank you for a lot of you smiled and said hello. Even the DCS ombudsman smiled and said hi. So it's nice to feel welcomed. I'm not here to cause too much trouble. Okay, my 2 minutes. First one, you may want to consider a public work study session, much as a school board does, for entertaining questions and public input and that type of thing, and having some of the presentations. Second, I gave you a handout of the difference between a court order versus a warrant. Third, as of August 24th, 2018, there's 235 missing kids from Child Protective Services, DCS. So again, I'm going to try to keep you guys informed about that. Where are these kids? Who has them? 60% of the kids that run away in foster care are sexually trafficked. So that means out of the 235, about 39 of the kids have been sex trafficked in Arizona. So it's important that we find these kids. Fourth, case review panel. For years in different other areas of government here, we've had citizen community boards that review specific cases. You sign an affidavit that you'll be confidential about this. I served on a CPS one here in Phoenix, and I served on one in Payson. I would recommend that that's highly considered. It's done in the behavioral health field through the Department of Health Services. I don't see why it couldn't be done in this area. I was the first executive director for My Kid, mentally ill kids in distress. By the end of the first year, our organization received a statewide award for child abuse prevention. The major thing of why I believe that was we created parent support groups, and we had them all over Arizona. So hundreds of parents could come in, vent. A lot of times you just need to be able to cry, cuss, talk, share, and find out how did that work for you? How did it work for me? Thank you.
Thank you.
That's 2 minutes.
It was exactly 2 minutes. Okay, the next person is Lori Ford. Coming forward.
Hopefully there's enough for everybody. Good afternoon, my name is Lori Ford. I'm going to talk about the mysterious citizen review panels today. The 2018 Annual Progress and Services Report submitted to the U.S. Health and Human Services Administration for Children and Families did come out. Some questions: who was this report compiled by, and who submitted it to HHS? It has none of that information on, I believe it's a 178-page report to the feds. It also states in there that the Arizona Citizen Review Panels, they meet quarterly. Arizona continues to maintain active and diverse membership in 3 CRPs. So effective January 1st, 2018, DCS CEO Greg McKay moved the panels in-house. According to CAPTA 106C4C, it states that each panel shall provide for public outreach and comment. It allows the states to determine how to provide for that outreach, and we have yet to hear anything about any citizen review panels. Search on the DCS website comes up with no results, as you'll see in the handout that I gave you. And the Community Advisory Committee report, thank you for that. That was interesting to go through and read. On April 6, 2018, Catherine Guffey, she's the DCS Chief Quality Improvement Officer, she discussed with you people to become a citizen review panel. You did vote yourselves in at that time to become a citizen review panel. And so I'm wondering, is this committee a citizen review panel? Is it a duo combination? And is that adherence to CAPTA?
Thank you very much. Time's up.
Sure. So that is the handout for you, and pursuant to the agenda, I hope that's on the website.
Melinda?
Hi. Regarding the ombudsman, I saw a deposition of your ombudsman, and she was the person most knowledgeable about all of about what was happening, and this between the people and DCS, and she had absolutely no knowledge of the constitutional rights that flow between parents and children. It was all about policy, not about first principles. And we are now in a constitutional crisis in this country. There's a stunning parallel between what's happening with the big guys in Washington, D.C., and the people of the state of Arizona regarding the power that false allegations have to the destruction of American families. Too often, DCS opens cases based on false and ridiculous allegations of abuse and/or neglect without proof of harm, without warrants, without exigency, and without any due process of the law. Because 90% of these parents have never harmed their children. And when I ask countless numbers of parents, have you committed a crime against your child? Were you prosecuted for a crime? And yet the sentences conferred on parents over the concerns of DCS are tantamount to a death sentence to a family, because they never see their children again if they go into severance. Criminals, people in prison who have committed murder, get to see their children. But parents who have been deemed unfit by people who are not following the laws of the land, or first principles, or constitutional rights,
Thank you. Your time's up. Thank you.
lose their kids.
Lawrence Espinoza.
First off, I wanted to say my heart goes out to the police officer who was killed and the 6 other officers who were shot in South Carolina by a foster care provider, where they showed up to see about a child that was being raped in foster care. And it does go out to you guys. That was CPS approved in South Carolina. And really, I think that the only people that really should be here is law enforcement. Like Melinda was saying about a crime being committed, if a person has done something so egregious to lose their children, they should be charged with a crime. And they're not. And I don't see the point where social workers go out and all of a sudden their opinion just matters. And it's confidentiality is like the right to remain silent, which this is working backwards. We have the right to privacy as citizens. The government does not have the right to privacy, and you got it all flipped around. You have these DCS hiding every crime they've committed. I would like this guy to go through my files and go make arrests, because that's what they have done. They have committed crimes. I say law enforcement should handle this. Law enforcement is trained to spot abuse of children. One last thing I want to say about abuse. DCS is out there preventing child abuse. That means if they prevented it, it hasn't happened. So you're taking children from people who have never harmed their kids. There's no crime committed. You did it before they did it. And I don't know who here is psychic and can tell, but Greg McKay said that there's no way possible to predict that, and he keeps quoted saying that. So that's all I have to say, and thank you.
Thank you. Patrick Hansen.
My name is Patrick Hansen. I passed around material for you guys to review. Just a little bit of my history. I'm a former combat infantry veteran who was deployed to Afghanistan, came back, and was raising my family until Department of Child Safety unlawfully kidnapped my children. I want to just remind everybody, as other people have, that we have a constitutional form of government limited by the Constitution to protect our rights. And I want to have you bring your attention to page 50 of the Citizens Rule Booklet, which covers the Bill of Rights. Article 4, the Fourth Amendment says, "The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue, but upon probable cause supported by an oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place and to be searched and the persons or things to be seized." We all know CPS doesn't follow that. Article 5, no person shall be held. If you skip down to the second part of this, it says, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be witness against himself or deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Due process does not allow hearsay. It requires someone to come forward. The Sixth Amendment, it also talks about your right to confront your witnesses against you. The Eighth Amendment, excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. And the 13th Amendment, this one's the most important. It says, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. CPS does not give people an opportunity to not be forced into involuntary servitude. So CPS will take your kids and they'll hold them hostage and say, you have to perform this service, and this service, and you have to jump through all these loops before we give you due process. And that's just egregious and outrageous. And every single person that works for government as a public servant takes a sworn oath of office that they will support the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Thank you.
And Article 6, Paragraph 2 is the supremacy clause. So that trumps all other color of law. Thank you.
Marissa Hamilton.
Thank you. I'm here to talk about Domestic Violence Awareness Month. In Arizona, due to the practices of DCS of separating children as a standard practice in the situations of domestic violence, it really is more Domestic Violence Month, where we look at all the stories that have happened. I, on a regular basis, get calls from parents that they were a woman that was in a domestic violence situation, went to a domestic violence shelter with her children to seek refuge, and then the next thing she knows, DCS is there to take her children away. This is a process that must end, and I'm so thankful that we have the Family Prevention Act that's going to change the funding starting October 2019, so that instead states will now have the funding shift where they need to be providing preventative services. We should be taking the whole family together with separating them from the abuser, and that's not what happens today. It is a death sentence to a mom to go to a domestic violence shelter with her kids because likely her kids are going to be removed from her. I am a survivor of domestic violence. If I had had children at the time, I don't know if I would have fled my abuser if I knew how likely I was going to end up having my children stolen from me, for the courage to leave abuse. I'd like to read to you very quickly Justice Bullock's statement that he made in his last ruling. And it says here, the framework set forth by the court today, and DCS policy largely, which can be changed, it's not under law, and in other recent decisions allow for the very real possibility that parents who have rehabilitated themselves, who have followed our cumbersome rules to the best of their ability, who have retained a strong familiar bond, and who have manifested the ability to parent will nonetheless lose their children irrevocably. This is not only constitutionally impermissible but intolerable in a free society. So I would request that you communicate to the Director DCS, Greg McKay, that he must change the policy. It is a directive from our President. It is time to look at preventative services and take that funding and use it to keep families together and make them stronger. Our municipalities are suffering because of this.
Thank you for your comment. Your time's up. Thank you. They have to fill out the form. There's no more form. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is to set the agenda for the next meeting. Did we have anything already set, Ben?
We do have a few items. We've got families first, school safety.
Could you repeat that, Ben?
Oh, sorry.
I didn't hear the first item.
So it's talking about the families first act. There was some stuff that Emily wanted to talk about with that. School safety, and I believe the strategic plan. We may be ready to talk about that now.
Okay.
And then you guys wanted to talk about the report from the public comment process. And that may be, I don't know if you guys want to add anything else.
Do we want to look at an update from DCS on the domestic violence removal?
Do we want to, maybe it's not for the next agenda, but maybe it's for a future one, to have DCS respond to their processes around domestic violence removal when families have been moved to a shelter?
We have, did everybody hear what's on for the next agenda? Okay, so far we have the families first, information on that. School safety, an update on the DCS strategic plan, and then the report on the committee that met for the public comment. That's kind of a full agenda. Is there any thoughts around that? I don't take her.
So as a citizens review panel, we're charged to review policy and practice and make recommendations. And I'm the family first, I think it's important. It's also in the future. School safety, I don't know what the discussion of what aspect of that in terms of DCS policy or practice, but I think that would be good to clarify that. I also would like to know about the citizens review panels, what the other panels are, and what's the procedure for communicating the information between the panels. And also in terms of our report deadlines and when the response from CPS to those recommendations, the timelines around that. So I don't know that it can be considered at the next agenda, but I think it's an important item.
And Madam Chair, I concur about the citizens review panels. I think we might need a review of what our role specifically is in regards to the citizens review panel and what obligations we have in that respect.
And Madam Chair, to that point, whether we are one, at least in the eyes of federal law under CAPTA, or whether that is some other body or subcategory of the agency, just clarification in general about how DCS views its responsibilities under CAPTA for that.
So do we want to move that on to the next month and then move something else maybe to a later date?
Given the reporting deadlines, I think that's critical.
Okay, so what would we like to move? School safety?
Madam Chair, yeah, I can't remember the discussion on the school safety piece, but it sounds like it might have been just an overview of the protocol in general.
I don't remember it either, but it's a huge topic that involves multiple layers. So I'm not sure how our role, what the respect to which area of school safety we're talking about.
So maybe we could move that one to a later meeting, and it might need a longer portion of the meeting.
And maybe find in the minutes more specifics about what topic under school safety we're talking about.
School violence.
So then that leaves for next, the meeting in December, the Families First information, review of the DCS strategic plan, gathering more information on the citizen review panel, what are our roles, responsibilities, and expectations of us, and are we a citizen review panel under CAPTA? And then the report for the public comment committee.
And just to keep it up, I just want to concur that the learning if there is a policy in general that deals with domestic violence shelters, I'm very curious about, or whether that's just a case by case and it's treated like any other time that there's a complaint that comes in or a mandatory reporter situation. But that would be good to learn about.
Put that on the list for future ideas.
Yes, maybe the next meeting after that.
Do we need to do a motion
For the agenda?
for the agenda?
I'm not sure, but we can certainly make one to have the items discussed set for our December meeting agenda.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All ayes?
Aye.
Ayes? Ayes have it. Great. I think that's it. So I will adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.